Hello Year 7. So in today's lesson we are looking at how was the Battle of Hastings won. We've got just one learning objective, to understand the factors that are involved in the Battle of Hastings being both won and lost. So please make sure you complete the work set. There's a worksheet in Google Classroom to you. Please make sure you press submit afterwards. Any questions you might have, email me or your teacher. We're aware of these three candidates already. Let's have a look at the backstory for William, Duke of Normandy. Now, he had been promised a throne, he said, by Edward the Confessor, the Old English king, in 1051. And this was because William had sent soldiers to help Edward in battle in the past. Now, this news was delivered apparently by Harold Godwinson when he visited William in 1064. William said Harold Godwinson swore an oath on religious relics to support William and help him become king, to support that claim. So, you can imagine just how angry William would have been when he heard the news that Harold Godwinson had become King of England instead, that he'd gone back on his words. He was out hunting when he heard this. This meant that Harold Godwinson had broken his promise and a religious oath. And William was not a man to take this lightly. He'd once skinned alive 30 people for insulting his mother's family. William swore revenge. And he planned a huge army to invade England. He said to people, if you help me battle here, then I will give you land in England. It meant that rich people gave him troops or gave him money or gave him armour to help defeat Harold. William's army grew. His army was over 7,000 men and a fleet of over 700 ships. He also had 2,000 horses to ensure his army was fast and powerful. This type of an invasion force with horses hadn't arrived in England before, and this was known as Cavalry Troops, where someone fights on horseback. And already you can start to understand how seriously William was taking this battle. Can you imagine how difficult it would have been to look after those horses on the voyage over on the boats? However, William couldn't send his army over straight away, and this was because of the wind. He had to load the boats up and wait patiently for the correct weather. And eventually the winds changed and he was able to send his army over and land in Pevensey, as you can see here on the bottom right of this map, on the 28th of September. Now, once his troops were all off their ships, he set fire to them. Can you think why he might have done that? Well, it's because there was no possible escape now for William's men. This was a motivational tool. He was sending a clear message. You cannot think about retreat at any point during the battle. You either win here or you die here. The soldiers would fight harder to survive. Now, William did not focus on moving as far into England as he could. Instead, he said, we will move to Hastings. Why did he do that? Well, Harold Godwinson used to be an earl in this area, and he'd looked after it for the previous king. This meant Hastings was important to Godwinson. William knew this and destroyed the area, setting fire and building his fort. He would make Harold Godwinson come to him. Okay, so task 1. We've just looked at what William has done to prepare for the battle. Could you please make a list of all of William's skill in preparing for this? What has he done to ensure the best possible chance of success? Think about who he has asked for help and what he's promised them. Think about the size of his army. What's he done with the boats? And then what do you think was the most important piece of skill you've seen so far from William? And can you explain why? The blue slides will help if you need to go back. Please pause the video here and then press play to continue. Okay, so let's go back and recap what we know, what Harold Godwinson had been up to. So we know the 25th of September, Godwinson had marched his army almost 200 miles in 4 days. They had fought and defeated Harald Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Now, Harold had lost lots of men, including many of his professional soldiers, the housecarls, in this battle. And we also know 28th of September that William had landed 250 miles away. And Harold basically wastes no time at all. He tells his troops, we are going to march south again. We are going to march to fight William. He doesn't give a lot of time for rest, and he builds the numbers up with his army from villagers as he goes along to replace the professional soldiers. He was hoping to use the tactic of surprise to help him win, just like it had at Stamford Bridge. 14th of October 1066, Battle Day. Harold positioned his troops on Senlac Hill. This was named Lake of Blood. It's Norman for Lake of Blood, and it was named after the battle, which shows how much blood was shed during this day. William's men were at the bottom of the hill. Now, this battlefield had streams and boggy areas. It slowed down the horses and it slowed down the men. It was not ideal fighting conditions at all. William, wearing the religious artefacts and relics around his neck he said Harold had sworn his oath on, made the first move. He ordered his archers to fire arrows up the hill at the English. But Godwinson's army was so tightly packed together on the hill, they were able to lift their shields, and you can see them overlapping there. Now, it's said that the shield wall was so tightly packed together, these men were so tightly packed, that if they died, they were still held upright, that they couldn't fall to the floor. The shield wall meant that the arrows did very little damage at all. And once the arrows had stopped, the English lowered their shields and started banging them, shouting out, out, out to intimidate the French. William's next move was to send his knights on horseback, again that term cavalry, and the foot soldiers up the hill. He intended to smash through the English shield wall by force. However, this steep hill meant his troops were tired once they had reached the English at the top and they engaged in fighting. They were actually exhausted before they even engaged in battle. Now, these timings are obviously rough, but from roughly about 12:30 till 3:30, the same pattern follows. You end up with the troops running up the hill, and the English shield wall stops any attacks. It's a lot of stabbing, it's a lot of slashing, and people dying, but there's no real progress for either side. And it was clear William would need a new strategy to win. Now, at this stage in the battle, which side would you argue had the better chance of victory, Harold or William? Can you explain why you've picked this side and give me evidence to support this at this point in the battle, the halfway stage? The yellow slides will help. Pause the video here and then press play to continue. Now, worse was to come for William. His army hadn't seen him for about half an hour, and rumours started to spread. His side started to panic. The army panicked that he had died. And luckily, William was able to understand this situation in the chaos of battle. And he was able to reveal his face. Don't forget, he'd had it covered because of the armour. He revealed his face to show he had not died. He was still alive. Some of his troops had started to retreat down the hill. They thought that the battle was over. Once they saw this news, they turned around, and they killed a few of the English troops that had followed them down the hill. William realised this was a tactic that could help him to win. He ordered sections of his army to run up the hill towards the English, and then run down the hill as if they were retreating. The English believed that they were actually retreating. And remember, many of these troops were villagers. They weren't actually trained soldiers. They did not understand the importance of staying on top of the hill at all times and that shield wall. They were consumed with belief that they were winning this war, that the French were actually retreating. And this meant they ran down the hill to catch and kill them. The French troops at the bottom of the hill turned around and killed the English. These English troops that ran down the hill no longer had the hill to protect them or the shield wall. Now, William hopes repeating this tactic would work, and it did. Again, the same tactic. The French troops ran up and then ran down. More English troops ran down the hill, and this made the shield wall weaker over time. There were fewer troops at the top of the hill to protect the king. And at this point, William again commanded his archers to fire on the remaining English on top of the hill. Harold was killed on top of the hill. Now, some believe he was shot in the eye by an arrow before William's troops ran up and they cut his body into pieces. He was very hard to identify afterwards. William was able to destroy the shield wall and force Harold's army into retreat. He was victorious, and we now had a French king in England. The time of the Saxons was over. The time of the Normans in England had begun. William was now known as William the Conqueror. So, your final task for this lesson, task 3. The Battle of Hastings was won by William because of his skill. Think about this. Think about what William did correctly during the battle, but also think about maybe mistakes that Harold Godwinson made. Should he have rested his army up more? Should he have collected more men? Think about luck you might have seen in a battle. What about if the winds hadn't have changed? What about if William had arrived first when Godwinson was waiting for him in the south of England? What about if Harold hadn't lost so many of his troops in the Battle of Stamford Bridge? What about if William hadn't have been aware of the troops retreating when they thought he was dead? Have a look at these 3 bullet points. Can you give me 2 reasons why someone might believe that the Battle of Hastings was won by William because of his skill? 2 reasons why someone might not believe in this statement. They might think it was to do with luck, for example. Give me examples. And what do you think? Was the battle won because of William's skill, or was there another reason? Explain why you think this. The red slides will help you, and you might need to go back through the rest of the video. Pause the video here, complete this work, and then press play to end this lesson. Okay, and that's it. Please make sure you